Salvatore Benedetto arrived in America in 1947 with $17 in his pocket and a pair of barber scissors his father had given him. He worked in other men's shops for years, saving every penny, until 1953 when he finally opened his own place on Vine Street. It was small, modest, the kind of shop where working men came for a trim and a shave, where nobody famous ever set foot. That changed on a rainy afternoon in November 1955. Salvatore was alone in the shop, reading an Italian newspaper when the door opened and a man walked in. He was soaking wet, his expensive suit ruined, his hair plastered to his forehead. He looked like he had been walking in the rain for hours. "You open?" the man asked. Yes, please sit." The man sat in Salvatore's chair and stared at himself in the mirror. Salvatore recognized him immediately. Everyone in America knew that face. Dean Martin, the singer, the movie star, the man who seemed to have everything. But the man in Salvatore's chair didn't look like he had everything. He looked lost. He looked broken. He looked like a man who had been walking in the rain because he had nowhere else to go. "Just a trim," Dean said quietly. "And maybe we could just sit here for a while, if that's okay." Salvatore nodded. He didn't ask questions. He didn't make small talk. He simply began to cut, slowly and carefully, the way his father had taught him. The rain drummed against the windows. The scissors clicked softly. And for 30 minutes, neither man said a word. When the haircut was finished, Dean looked at himself in the mirror. Something in his face had changed. Some tension had released. He reached for his wallet. "How much?" $2. Dean pulled out a $100 bill and pressed it into Salvatore's hand. "Keep it, and keep the chair open. Same time next week. Can you do that?" Salvatore looked at the money, then at Dean. "Every Thursday, too. The chair is yours." Dean nodded and walked out into the rain. But he came back the following Thursday, and the Thursday after that, and every Thursday for the next 40 years. The first year, Dean barely spoke. He would come in, sit in the chair, close his eyes and let Salvatore work. Sometimes he would fall asleep. Salvatore learned to cut around the sleeping, to work in silence, to give this man whatever it was he needed, which seemed to be nothing more than a quiet room and a pair of hands that asked nothing of him. But slowly, over months and years, Dean began to talk. It started with small things. Comments about the weather. Complaints about traffic. Salvatore would respond in his halting English and Dean would smile, and the ice would crack a little more. By the second year, Dean was telling Salvatore about his work, about directors who were idiots, about songs he was tired of singing but had to perform every night because that's what the audience wanted. By the third year, Dean was telling Salvatore about his family, about his first wife, Betty, whom he had loved but couldn't stay faithful to, about his children, who he adored but didn't know how to talk to, about his second wife, Jean, who he called the only woman who ever really understood me. By the fifth year, Dean Martin was telling Salvatore Benedetto things he had never told anyone. "You know why I come here, Sal?" Dean said one Thursday afternoon in 1960. "Because you're the only person in my life who doesn't want anything from me. Frank wants me to be his buddy. The studio wants me to be their star. My wives want me to be a husband. My kids want me to be a father. Everyone wants something. But you, Sal, you just want to cut my hair." Salvatore smiled. "I want you to sit still. You move too much." Dean laughed. It was the first time Salvatore had heard him really laugh. Not the performative chuckle he used on television. A real laugh from somewhere deep. "See? That's what I mean. You don't care that I'm Dean Martin. You'd tell me to sit still if I was the President of the United States." "President moved too much. I tell him too." From that day forward, the barbershop became a sanctuary, a place where Dean could say things he couldn't say anywhere else. And Salvatore, who had been taught by his father that a barber's first duty was discretion, listened to everything and repeated nothing. The secrets came slowly at first, small admissions that Dean would never make in public. "I don't actually drink, you know, the whole drunk thing. It's an act. Apple juice in the glass. Always has been. Salvatore kept cutting. Why you pretend? Because people expect it. Because it's easier to be a lovable drunk than a complicated person. Because if I act like nothing matters, then when things go wrong, I can pretend they don't hurt. Things hurt? Dean was quiet for a long moment. Everything hurts, Sal. Every single day. I just got good at hiding it. Over the years, the confessions grew deeper. Dean told Salvatore about his childhood in Steubenville, about the poverty and the prejudice, about being called a dirty wop, and learning to smile through the humiliation. He told him about his father, a stoic Italian barber. Just like you, Sal, who never told Dean he loved him, not once, not ever. He told him about his mother, who he adored, who believed in him when nobody else did, who he still talked to in his head every night before he fell asleep. He told Salvatore about the women, not bragging, the way he did with the guys, but honestly, painfully, about the loneliness that drove him to seek comfort in strangers, about the guilt that ate at him when he came home to his wife. I love Jean, Dean said one afternoon in 1962, his voice barely above a whisper. I really love her. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. But I keep hurting her. I keep doing things that hurt her. And I don't know why. It's like there's something broken inside me, Sal. Something that doesn't know how to be loved without destroying it. Salvatore put down his scissors. My father, he used to say, the man who runs from love is the man who never learned to receive it. You learn to give. You give and give. But receiving, that is harder. That requires trust. Maybe you don't believe you deserve. Dean stared at him in the mirror. His eyes were wet. When did you get so smart, Sal? I listened 40 years. Some things I learn. The deepest confessions came in the 1970s, when Dean's life began to unravel. His marriage to Jean ended. His television show was canceled. The Rat Pack had dispersed. Frank was distant. And Dean, for the first time in his adult life, was alone. I don't know who I am anymore, Dean told Salvatore in 1973. I've been Dean Martin for so long that I forgot who Dino Crocetti was, and now I'm 56 years old, and I look in the mirror, and I don't recognize the man looking back at me. Salvatore trimmed carefully around Dean's ears. Dino Crocetti is still there, under the suits, under the songs, under the smile. He is the one who comes here every Thursday. Dean Martin could go anywhere. Dino Crocetti comes to a little shop on Vine Street because he remembers what it was like to be ordinary, to be real. Those Thursday afternoons became Dean Martin's therapy, his confession booth, his one honest relationship in a world of performance and pretense. Salvatore never judged. He never gossiped. He simply listened and cut and occasionally offered a piece of wisdom that Dean would carry with him for weeks. And through it all, Salvatore wrote everything down. It started innocently enough. In 1958, Salvatore's wife Lucia suggested he keep a diary to improve his English. She bought him a notebook and told him to write something every day. Salvatore began writing about his days at the shop, about the customers, about Dean. At first he wrote just a few sentences. Mr. Martin came today. He seemed tired. But as the years passed and the confessions deepened, Salvatore's entries grew longer. He was documenting something unprecedented, the inner life of one of the most famous men in America. By 1995, Salvatore had filled 37 notebooks, hundreds of pages, 40 years of secrets, fears, regrets, and revelations. The real Dean Martin, as no one had ever known him. Salvatore never told Dean about the notebooks. He never told anyone. He kept them locked in a fireproof safe in his closet, preserving every word for reasons he couldn't quite explain. December 25, 1995. Christmas morning. Salvatore was at home with his family when the phone rang. His daughter Maria answered. Her face went pale. Papa, it's about Mr. Martin. Dean Martin had died in his sleep. He was 78 years old. Salvatore sat down heavily in his chair. He wasn't there with his family anymore. He was in the shop on Vine Street 40 years ago, watching a soaking wet man walk through the door and ask for a trim. He was my friend, Salvatore said quietly. 40 years. Every Thursday. He was my friend. Salvatore attended the funeral. He stood in the back, an old man in a simple black suit, unrecognized by the celebrities and dignitaries who filled the church. He watched them eulogize Dean Martin, the king of cool, the Rat Pack legend, the entertainer who made everything look easy. And he thought about all the things they didn't know, all the things only he knew. After the funeral, Salvatore went home and sat with his notebooks for a long time. His wife found him there at midnight. "What will you do with them?" she asked. "I don't know." "You could sell them. Publishers would pay millions." Salvatore looked at her with something like horror. "Sell them? Lucia, these are his secrets, his private thoughts. He trusted me. He's gone now. He wouldn't know. I would know. God would know." Salvatore closed the notebook. "No. These stay locked away. When I die, Maria can decide, but I will not be the one who betrays him, not even after death." Salvatore Benedetto lived another 8 years after Dean Martin's death. He retired from barbering in 1998. In the summer of 2003, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave him 3 months. One evening, he called his daughter Maria into his bedroom. She was 52 years old now, a school teacher, the child who had always been closest to him. He pointed to the closet. "In the safe. The combination is your mother's birthday. There are notebooks inside, 37 of them." Maria looked confused. "What notebooks, Papa?" "I wrote down everything, 40 years, every Thursday with Mr. Martin. Everything he told me." Maria's eyes widened. "Dad, do you know what those would be worth?" "I know. That's why I'm trusting you with them. Burn them, keep them. I leave it to you. But know this. Everything in those pages," he told me in confidence. "He trusted me. Whatever you decide, remember that." "What would you want me to do?" Salvatore was quiet for a long moment. "I think some things should stay between friends, even after death. But I am old and maybe old-fashioned. You decide." Salvatore Benedetto died on October 14, 2003. He was 89 years old. After the funeral, Maria went to her father's house and opened the safe. The notebooks were there, 37 of them, spanning 1958 to 1995. She picked one up and began to read. The pages were filled with her father's careful handwriting. She read about Dean Martin's fears, his regrets, his secret kindnesses and private shames. She read about his marriages, his children, his complicated feelings about fame and fortune. She read about the night Dino Jr. died and how Dean had sat in her father's chair and wept for 2 hours straight. Maria read for 3 hours. Then she closed the notebook and sat in the darkness, overwhelmed by the weight of what she held. These notebooks were worth millions. Literally millions. Every publisher in the world would kill for them. The real Dean Martin, in his own words, unfiltered and uncensored. But Maria kept hearing her father's voice. "He trusted me." She thought about Dean Martin, a man she had never met but had heard about her entire life. Every Thursday, Papa would come home and mention Mr. Martin. Never the secrets, just small things. Mr. Martin seemed sad. "Mr. Martin asked about you, Maria." Dean Martin had asked about her. A stranger, a celebrity, had taken the time to ask about a barber's daughter. That meant something. She made her decision. The next morning, Maria built a fire in the backyard. She brought out the notebooks one by one and fed them to the flames. 37 notebooks, 40 years of secrets, turning to ash and smoke. It took her 3 hours to burn them all. When it was done, she sat by the dying embers and cried, for the weight that had been lifted from her shoulders. But Maria didn't burn everything. As she was feeding the notebooks to the fire, one page had slipped out and fluttered to the ground. She picked it up and read it. And something in those words made her fold the page carefully and slip it into her pocket. She kept that page, One page out of hundreds. One secret out of thousands. The page was dated March 25th, 1987, 4 days after Dino Jr.'s death. In her father's handwriting it read, "Mr. Martin came today, first time since his son died. He sat in the chair, but I did not cut. He just sat. For a long time he said nothing. Then he spoke. He said, 'Sal, I need to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone. Not my wives. Not Frank. Not my children. Just you.' I waited. He said, 'I don't believe in God. I've pretended my whole life, gone to church, said the prayers, but I never really believed. It all seemed like stories, like fairy tales for people who couldn't handle the truth.' He stopped. He was crying. He said, 'But last night I prayed. For the first time in my life I really prayed. I got down on my knees and I begged God to let me talk to my son one more time, just one more time, to tell him I loved him, to tell him I was proud of him, to tell him all the things I never said because I thought there would always be more time.' He could not speak for a while. Then he said, 'And God answered me, Sal. I swear to you, God answered me. I was on my knees crying, begging, and suddenly I felt this warmth, this peace, like arms around me. And I heard my son's voice, clear as day. He said, 'I know, Dad. I always knew.' Mr. Martin looked at me. 'Do you think I'm crazy, Sal? Do you think grief made me imagine it?' I told him, 'I think God speaks to those who are ready to listen. Maybe you were never ready before. Maybe it took losing everything to become ready.' Mr. Martin nodded. He wiped his eyes. 'I'm going to believe now, Sal, for whatever time I have left. I'm going to believe that I'll see him again, that we'll have all the time we never had. Is that foolish?' I told him, 'If that is foolish, then I am the biggest fool in the world, because I believe the same.' Mr. Martin smiled. First time since his son died. 'Thank you, Sal, for everything, for 40 years of Thursdays. I don't know what I would have done without you.' I told him, 'Same time next week.' He laughed, small laugh, but real. 'Same time next week,' he said, 'until we don't need haircuts anymore.' Maria kept that page framed on her nightstand, where she could see it every morning when she woke up. In 2019, Maria was diagnosed with the same cancer that had taken her father. As she prepared for the end, she thought about the page she had kept. She decided to share it. Not with publishers, not with tabloids, but with Dean Martin's daughter, Deanna. Maria wrote a letter explaining who she was, who her father had been, and what the notebooks had contained. She explained that she had burned them out of respect for Dean's privacy, but she included the one page she had saved. "I thought you should know," Maria wrote. "Not the scandals, not the secrets, but this. The fact that your father, in his darkest moment, found faith, found peace, found a reason to believe that he would see his son again. I thought that might mean something to you." Deanna Martin received the letter 3 weeks before Maria died. She read it and wept. She called Maria to thank her, but Maria was too weak to speak. Deanna's final message to Maria was this: "Tell her thank you. Tell her that my father was right. Some things are meant to stay between friends, but this was meant to bring comfort. And it has." Maria Benedetto died on December 18, 2019. Her family said she went peacefully, with a small smile on her face. The page now hangs in Deana Martin's home. The only surviving fragment of 40 years of Thursdays. The only window into the real Dean Martin that anyone outside that barbershop will ever have. It doesn't reveal scandals. It doesn't expose secrets. It reveals something far more precious. A broken man finding faith in his darkest hour. A father believing he would see his son again. A soul, long closed to the divine, finally opening itself to hope. That's the Dean Martin that Salvatore Benedetto knew. Not the king of cool. Not the Rat Pack legend. Just a man in a barber's chair, trying to make sense of his life. grateful for the one person who listened without wanting anything in return. Every Thursday, 2 p.m., for 40 years. That's friendship. That's trust. That's the secret worth keeping. And that's why, when people ask what made Dean Martin special, the answer isn't the songs or the movies or the effortless charm. The answer is that even at the height of his fame, he never forgot how to be ordinary. He never forgot how to sit in a chair and be real with another human being. Rest in peace, Salvatore Benedetto. You were the best friend Dean Martin ever had, and you never told a soul.